Everyone, Michael here. Today I want to address the opposite side of the argument I previously addressed on the Steve Laws issue, criticising Steve Laws' extremism. But I also want to look at the Jewish perspective, mainly from Andrew Gold and Israel advocacy. Now, with these issues, I am a fair man and I always like to look deeply into all matters. I don't just become an ideologue or want to pick a side. I want to look at all sides of the argument and come to a fair conclusion. And what generally happens is I'll end up getting grief from all sides. So I believe there's a healthy centre ground, or hence a sensible position to be made in between civic nationalism and the hardcore ethno-nationalism, which would be civic nationalism. Civic nationalism is a stupid idea. It's basically the same as open borders. But the hardcore ethno-nationalists who want to deport everyone, even mixed race, that's also a stupid idea. And that there's a healthy middle ground, which is basically that the English need to be made a massive supermajority again, and we'll have a tiny amount for good migrants to come into the country. That's a sensible position that most people can agree with. But when I criticise the Civ-Nats, they'll have a go at me. And when I criticise mainly the National Socialist type eth-nats, they'll have a go at me as well. And that's the same on the issue with the debate between the Jews and the National Socialist types like Steve Laws and even the ethno-nationalists. I like to separate them because ethno-nationalism is a sensible position, but my argument is that the likes of Steve Laws shouldn't be followed because he's not really an ethno-nationalist. He's a National Socialist and he's obsessed with Hitler and all this weird stuff. And he gives sensible ethno-nationalism a bad name. Because if you make him the face of ethno-nationalism, it's going to cause us way more problems than we're going to fix. And also, as I've said before, he did a tweet where he said he's willing to follow the devil to get England to be English again. But I'm a real spiritual man of God, the Logos, and I will never follow the devil. I only follow God. And my argument is that we shouldn't follow a man who wants to follow the devil. You should follow someone like myself who follows the Logos, who follows the Father, Christ and God. And we can restore our country with the power of the Logos, Christ and God, not by following the devil. That's my point. But back to addressing the Jews. As I said, I've made some criticisms of Steve Laws in my previous videos, and I want to just address the Jewish side and the problems I've had with Andrew Gold. Now, I think Andrew Gold is a reasonable guy. To be honest, I think his YouTube channel is mainly about causing a bit of drama and getting views. And his goal of getting Steve Laws is to say, I've got the most racist man. It was basically just about getting views. And when we have all these content creators, they're not mostly interested in solving problems. They're interested in clickbait and views and grifting. And this is why he had the likes of Bonnie Blue on, and it's all about getting views. Whereas if you're interested in making things better, you'll have sensible debate and you'll get graceful women on podcasts to promote how to be a real woman, not to be Bonnie Blue type. But to address some of the things I have a problem with what he said in this debate, and to be fair, I've even spoke to Jews who have debunked some of the stupidity he came out with. And a couple of things he said that is naturally going to wind up the English people is he basically said, oh, well, the white English are going to disappear. They're going to go extinct. And that's the last thing you want to say to a people who feel like they're losing their country. And in fairness, I think that he's just stupid in general, because he even said it about his own people. He said, well, it's the same with the Ashkenazi Jews. So I don't think he's necessarily trying to subvert the English. I think he's just ignorant and naive. And he even is subverting his own, if you look at it, the fact he said that Ashkenazi Jews are going to disappear as well. And that we have just as many subversives. It's not that he's trying to deliberately be subversive. He's just naive and stupid. And we have a load of English people who are even Christians, like Bob of Speaker's Corner, Nick Tenconi. They're not deliberately trying to be subversive to the English, but they've come up with absolutely stupid things, which is a product of our modern education system and people lacking wisdom. Like Bob and Nick have said they don't care if England is all Africans as long as they're Christian, which is absolutely ridiculous. And it goes against the Logos, Christ and God's wisdom. And this is why I'm not a Christian, because, Jews, Christians, Muslims, it's just basically very shallow and doesn't have depth and wisdom of God. They're essentially all blind fools who have belief. And just because they believe something doesn't mean they know the truth and they know the Father and they have the wisdom of the Father, like Christ has or had, and as many of the great spiritual masters who I follow have. And a second point that Andrew Gold said, which was ridiculous, Steve Laws said to him, what is your ideal vision for Britain? And he said his ideal vision is the Michaela School. And the Michaela School is like 90 to 95% non-white English. And his argument is that, well, they're taught about English and British values, so it's fine. But that's the worst, not the worst. It's basically not going to reverse the demographic change, and England will not be English if there are no English people there. It doesn't matter if they're all Indians and Africans who claim that they've been taught about English and they're proud to be English. There is no English people there. It's not going to be England. Now, how would Andrew Gold like it if Israel became all 95% Indians and Africans, but they were taught about Judaism and Israel? Obviously, he wouldn't like it and Jews wouldn't like it. So it's a ridiculous comparison or ridiculous idea or concept to think that that's a good thing. And this is where I move on to the Israel advocacy, because he did a video basically saying why Andrew Gold was stupid to say a lot of what he said. And to also start off with comment on this, in the comments of the Israel advocacy, there was a lot of British Jews or Jews in Britain saying that they support the English, and that no, even though they disagree with Steve Law's extremism, they agree that England is for the English and they should support us. So that's good. And I believe that probably most British Jews think that, and they understand that they are separate and they've kept themselves separate, and that they're guests in our country, but they support that England is for the English and respect that. And this is what Israel advocacy went on to. He went on to say that, yes, it is hypocritical for Jews to want their own ethno-state, but then criticise the English for wanting their own ethno-state. Every people deserves their own nation. England for the English, China for the Chinese, Israel for the Jews, Pakistan for Pakistanis. That's natural, and I believe that's the way that God set things up and wants things to be done. We all celebrate our own ethnicity, but we also celebrate others. And we're all brothers in the spirit, but we all have to live by our own nation and be proud of our nations. And that our nationalities shouldn't cause us to be divided and hate one another, but we should love and accept different cultures. Like for me, I love learning about different cultures and going to different countries and learning about it. I find it fascinating. And I find a globalized world where we're all blended in would be boring and pointless. We'd actually lose our culture. We'd have one globalist communist culture where we're all slaves. And that's what we need to fight against. And one way of doing that is by all people essentially respecting the countries they're in, including all the English abroad, who the English abroad do respect the countries they're in. But back to the one point of the Israel advocacy video that I disagreed with, is he made a lot of good points, and he also said that the Jews bring a lot of good stuff to England, and I agree. They have brought a lot of good. They don't cause any trouble. Their numbers have stayed steady throughout the years, so they're not replacing us. They're very good at business, Nobel Peace Prizes. They're smart, intelligent, respectful. So I have zero problems, and I agree with all that. The one thing that was a little bit disrespectful is that towards the end, he said something along the lines of, well, we don't need you, you need us. And I was thinking, well, that's not necessarily true. And again, that's something that's going to agitate some English people, especially English people who feel they're losing their country, or the national people who are falling for the National Socialist types. If they hear him saying, well, we don't need you, you need us. And then he went on about, how we help the economy and we're some of the richest people and we created all these jobs. That's not going to lean into the way of winning over the National Socialist types, because they see it that the Jews, they hoard all the money and all that stuff. So you're not going to win them over. And also, it's factually completely incorrect, because I was just thinking about it. He was saying, look, we brought all these companies, he said that Jews started Marks and Spencer's and Tesco's and all the benefit. Obviously it creates jobs and it's good for the economy. That's very true. But that's what they brought. But the Anglos, the Anglo people, if it wasn't for the Anglos, then there would be no European Jews, because if Hitler won the World War II and defeated the Anglos of, England, America and the Anglosphere, the British Empire, there would be no European Jews, there would be no Israel, and likely there would be bare minimum or very, very few Jews in the entire world. So, who did more for one another? The Anglos literally saved the Jewish people. There would probably be no Jewish people in the world, or barely any, and there would be none in Europe, and there would be no Israel. But the Jews gave us Marks and Spencer and Tesco. I think one gave more to the other. And my opinion is, look, We don't need to compete. We don't need to have any of these silly sort of arguments. We should be allies and look to serve one another. But you also have to accept your guests in our country. And the English in Israel or in Thailand, in Spain, need to accept that they're guests there. And if, for example, there's many English patriots who are abroad. Paul Thorpe is in Spain. I think James Goddard is in Thailand. There's many other all over the world. And if those countries, if Spain want to kick out Paul Thorpe, that's their right to do so. If Thailand want to kick out James Goddard, that's their right to do so. I have no problem, and they should respect the countries that they're in. And if they're good guests, then there'll be no reason for them to be kicked out of those countries. But, imagine if Paul Thorpe started going, oh, well, the Spanish, you need us English. If it wasn't for the English coming here drinking, you wouldn't have an economy in Benidorm. You'd be like, that's just disrespectful. You're not going to endear yourself to the Spanish Benidorm people if you start giving it the big un and disrespecting the host. And to be fair, a lot of Jewish people I follow don't make such accusations. They're nice people. Unfortunately, in social media, the people who come up with the stupidest stuff gain all the headlines, such as the likes of Steve Laws or Andrew Gold, or the extremist Muslims like Mohammed Ijab, or stupid morons like Andrew Tate, Candace Owens. The biggest morons will get the most media attention or social media attention because people love to argue, debate, and get involved in all crap. And that's essentially why I've set up this channel, because I'm a real man of Christ, a man of the Logos, and it's time to spread that wisdom into the country and into the world. And that's what this channel is about, is doing it for the UK mission. My personal channel, The Way of the Logos, is to bring people to God, the true spiritual Father, through the Logos, through Christ. And it's way deeper and way more wise than just basic religion. And it's been present throughout the entire history. Marcus Aurelius spoke of the Logos. Jewish mystics spoke of the Logos just before Jesus Christ came into the world. And Jesus Christ probably picked that up and spoke the spiritual truth, but then it got corrupted because throughout time Christianity changed into this idea of atonement, and Jesus being a blood sacrifice, and lost the spiritual power behind it. And it's also been present in Hinduism. They talk about it as the Brahman. It's in Buddhism, it's in Tao. So the Logos, the spiritual truth, God made it, and it's resonated through all civilizations. No religion has it. There's no chosen people. No Jews, Christians, Muslims are not chosen people. We're all made in the image of God, and God's, or the most important people are the people who are born again of the Spirit. As Christ said, and as a lot of spiritual traditions says, you unlock the Spirit within, and the light of the world are those who spread the light of the Logos. And that's what this is all about. So that's the point of my video today. And I've got a lot of love for all people, especially the Jews. I think at this time they're facing a lot of unnecessary persecution. And that's why it's also important the Jews need to help themselves and not allow stupid people to advocate for them. But they do need a lot of protection at this moment and support. And the Jews have my complete support, because they're getting it from the far left. They're getting it from the far right. They're getting it from religious persecution from the Muslims and certain Christians like Candace Owens, Tucker Carlson, starting to push the Jewish conspiracy theories. And we're seeing, just like Bondi Beach, such as the stabbing in Manchester, I think it was the synagogue attack, they're facing a lot of persecution, and we need to ally and support the Jews. And my message to the British Jews is that the majority of good English people will support you, and we need to just put forward the most wise people of our people, not subversive, stupid people. And it's good to have healthy debate, like Steve Laws. I can criticise him, no problem. People can criticise me. But and the same with the Jews. The Jews can criticise some things that I say or that others say, and I can have healthy debate with Jews, and we can still remain friends and just have disagreement. The problem in our modern world is, if I have a slight disagreement with someone, doesn't mean that I hate them and that we should be against each other. This is the problem with the Civ-Nats and the F-Nats, is that most of them will probably agree that there's a sensible middle line. And the other day, Tommy Robinson, I posted a clip of Tommy Robinson basically saying that England belongs to the white English and that we must remain a major majority, which is him moving his position more towards the F-Nat side, because he was a bit of a ignorant Civ-Nat, or he was accused of that because he said some things that doesn't make sense. But he's moving towards a more F-Nat position, and I've had some I posted it as a sign of, look, this is a good thing. And a lot of F-Nats on Twitter as well are like, oh, he's a traitor. So I thought the goal here is for us all to come to a sensible solution of restoring England for the English, and that it's a good thing when someone like Tommy takes up a more sensible ethnic position where we also don't hate migrants. And it would be a good thing if people like Steve Laws come out and say, you know what, maybe I've been fallen to a bit of extremism. It's a good thing. Look, if Tommy and I can agree that England belongs to the English and that we only need a tiny bit of migration, that's a positive thing. And we need to come together and be united. Too many people are arguing online. And if somebody says something like, oh yeah, no, I don't mind a few migrants, they're called a traitor. It's ridiculous to say that to people. And even civnats like Paul Thorpe and Richard Inman, they'll immediately attack the ethnots and say, oh, they're a load of, they're as if they're completely stupid. But they ignore the fact they have a lot of good points. And this is why someone like Momus Najmi, a good migrant, he was on a live stream with them and they were criticising the hardcore ethnos and National Socialist types. But even Momus intervened and said, well, okay, they deserve some criticism. But he also says, look, you've got to agree that they make some good points, that England belongs to the English. And we can't ignore that fact and ignore the fact that they're making good points. And that Momus agrees that England should maintain 90 to 95% a supermajority of English. And that's the position we need to have. And that's why I like Momus, because like myself, he wants a common sense, noble compromise and wise solutions. Okay, so that's the point of my video today. I've gone off on a bit of a tangent and a rant, but I just wanted to get my position out. And that's why I think it's important that people follow the likes of this channel now, the likes of people like Momus, sensible, wise people who are coming up with solutions and who can unite people around a sensible solutions without taking extremes and arguing pointlessly when most of us agree on the correct position. Okay, so if you like what I'm talking about and you're new here, subscribe. Please like and share, because we need to start hitting the algorithm to get more followers and get more people involved in this movement. This movement is not about grifting. It is going to be set up as a non-profit. All money received for this movement will be used to help the UK people with the power of the logos. And it will be a light for the UK, and it will play, as long as people support it, a big role in helping the UK be restored and better than ever before. Thank you everybody for listening. God bless everybody today, and goodbye.